News breaking in the last hour or so. My colleague Ian Watson. Keir Starmer will use tomorrow's NEC meeting, the NEC being Labour's ruling executive, to confirm that Jeremy Corbyn will not be a candidate at the next election. This is...
And woe, the world did see that the anti-Semite was slain.
Racism finished forever.
Exactly.
Gone. We defeated racism finally.
Yeah, bigotry is no more. Can we all get a round of applause for this very brave and bold move?
What's so brilliant about this, in a world where our criminal justice system is completely fucked and racist, that a former director of public prosecutions ended racism.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. 100%.
Exactly. We have to be a racist in order to understand the racists.
That's
true.
Is something which the NEC can decide, but with a leadership majority, they are likely to debar the former UK Labour leader. He lost the whip some time ago because of his response.
You know what they should do? Just fuck it. As we're in the fucking ridiculous clown world banter timeline, parachute Mike Gapes in there. Fuck it. Who cares?
Definitely. 100%. Let's fucking
Why
go.
not?
Jeremy Corbyn, this is, because of his response to the report into anti-Semitism allegations and claims in the Labour Party. What's your response?
If you actually look at the motion that Keir Starmer's put forward, it doesn't mention anti-Semitism once. It only mentions the election loss. So why should Jeremy Corbyn be banned from standing again as an MP?
Which, by the way, that election loss was so bad because of Keir Starmer's insistence on a second referendum.
Exactly, 100%. Almost like him and Tom Watson might have engineered such a poor electoral outcome.
And it's not
to
that
deliberately depose Corbyn.
And it's not exactly
possible.
It's not like Keir Starmer essentially started his leadership bid in secret from 2008, was it?
No.
Quite.
2018, excuse me. Although we probably thought he could be prime minister in 2008.
True. But the thing as well is that, you know, we got a bigger percentage of the vote in 2019 than in both 2015 and in 2010. Yet Ed Miliband is on the fucking front bench. He's a loser. He's a bigger loser than Corbyn is. Yeah, apparently his presence in the party is absolutely fine, so much so that he can be, you know, front line as far as party comms is concerned.
And if I remember right, isn't the Islington North the vote share there has always been on knife edge? It hasn't been a huge majority for Labour, so maybe
it definitely hasn't increased every single year or anything like that.
No. But Ed Miliband has to stay because he's the one Jewish guy that the anti-Semite hasn't banned from the party. So,
True.
When Ed Miliband, who had a lower return of the vote share than Jeremy Corbyn, is allowed to sit in his shadow cabinet. Stuff like this is what makes people mistrust MPs. They talk about fairness publicly, but then what they try and get away with behind closed doors, well, it's all about factionalism and political opportunism.
Siobhan?
Boom.
Jeremy can sort this out. He can apologise for the anti-Semitism. He can acknowledge.
And she's immediately, literally, right? She just listened to Ash Sarkar say that in the statement they put out about blocking Corbyn from standing in Islington North, there was no mention of anti-Semitism whatsoever. And Siobhan McDonough's gone, yeah, the real issue here is the fact that, you know, he's being blocked because of the anti-Semitism. And it's like, no, that's literally not what the statement said.
It's because they have nothing. They know from the beginning that they had no leg to stand on. So to do what they did to Jeremy Corbyn in a fair and democratic way, all of this would not be happening. So they know they have no leg to stand on. So that's why they'll move the goalposts. It'll be about anti-Semitism, about this and about that. And it doesn't really fucking matter to these people. They just need to politically assassinate Jeremy Corbyn. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And the left more broadly, right? That's why they do it specifically, because he is being used as a proxy to attack the broad left in general.
But it doesn't mention anti-Semitism.
Was right, and this wouldn't happen.
But it doesn't mention anti-Semitism.
He is belligerently belittling and demoting the amount of anti-Semitism that went on.
But then why doesn't it mention anti-Semitism in Keir Starmer's motion? It only mentions the election loss.
But we know that is why this is happening.
But then why doesn't it say it in the motion? If we all know it, why isn't it in the motion?
It was, of course, the reason he lost the whip, wasn't it?
Because they don't want it to go to court.
Lost the Labour Party whip in the first place, and this is going a stage further, just to explain to viewers. But yes, Siobhan, why doesn't it mention it, do you think?
I haven't seen the motion, but what I know is that if Jeremy were to say, look, you know, in retrospect, things were bad, I should have done more.
He's already said that.
Anti-Semitism
He's
is
literally
always
said
wrong.
Yeah. He
He's
literally has
apologised.
already said that.
He's apologised countless times for the anti-Semitism, countless times, over and over and over again, and it's never enough for these people, right? The sticking issue is clearly about his comments around the EHRC report, which the EHRC report itself claims he should be allowed to say. I've read it in full on stream, right? It's explicit, saying that you should be allowed to be able to comment on the perceived scale of the problem within the party, rather than the perceived severity of the issues of anti-Semitism when they arise. Right? Those are two different things.
Despite everyone on Twitter accusing me of I've read the EHRC report and the Ford report from fucking cover to cover, and it quite clearly states in the EHRC that from 2018, when Jenny Thornberry was the General Secretary, essentially when Corbyn's team had captured some of the bureaucracy, that the anti-Semitism investigations had improved. The process literally improved. So when it was captured by the right wing, the Labour Party, they would do nothing about it. There were obviously two cases where it was apparently Labour Party broke the law, but it doesn't implicate Jeremy Corbyn in that. And
it doesn't implicate the Labour Party more broadly either.
Right, yeah. But essentially, the EHRC kind of exonerates Corbyn in a way. And there's never been, I don't think, this whole issue when it comes to anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, there's never been an actual debate or discussion around what was inside the EHRC. It was basically, this is what this politician has said about it. This is what Keir Starmer has said about it. This is Jeremy Corbyn's statement. But no one's really broken it down. No one's actually got an actual fucking lawyer to look at it and go, this is what it actually means. But that doesn't really matter to the media. They don't want to get to the meat of the issue. They just want to rely on sound bites. And obviously, when you give the microphone to everyone opposed to Jeremy Corbyn, saying, well, this report basically says he's a massive anti-Semite, they'll just go with it and that's it. But the report in black and white clearly states that it improved the process under Jenny Thornberry, and there was an issue that apparently Jeremy Corbyn was intervening in cases in regards to anti-Semitism, and the political opponents were saying he was intervening to try and get his mates off scot-free. That's not the case. He didn't want to intervene in the cases, but there were those underneath him, and including Tom Watson as well, who were pushing these cases on him. So please look at this, please look at this, please look at this. So fine, I'll look at it. And the issue in regards to Ken Livingstone, he intervenes to get him expelled or suspended faster.
It was clear. It's clear from the report that he intervenes to try and expedite the process because they knew that the anti-Semitism cases were a hot button political issue that needed solving. To essentially try and repair the image of the party that had been dragged through the mud by a media class that cared more about smear campaigns than they did about the truth.
And they used that to stab him in the back for it.
Yeah, I think we'll look back on the anti-Semitism thing in years to come as one of the greatest, and by greatest I mean largest, most complex, most successful hatchet jobs in the history of British politics.
It's one of the biggest McCarthy campaigns in British political history.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I mean, literally, just like 2017, it was so close that the establishment got scared. They thought that he was a pathetic candidate who was never going to achieve any political relevance. He almost became prime minister, and the establishment was just like, we can't have this. He must be destroyed.
And I remember in 2017 that the media weren't too bad on him. They almost reported him kind of fairly because they didn't treat him as a...
Well, because people forget at the start of that campaign, he was so far behind in the polls. Labour were going to get annihilated. And they thought, well, we don't really need to do a lot with this then. People, and then we can say, look, see, socialism doesn't work. But actually, once they released a series of socialist or suck-dem policies, and people went, actually, yeah, we like those. It was that point that he needed to be metaphorically assassinated.
This is quite anecdotal, but it's true. My girlfriend went to a festival. It's just basically young people, right? And this is during the 2017 campaign. And there were organisers at the festival who had stickers of vote Labour, vote Corbyn, and they even said, here's 5 policies of Jeremy Corbyn. Go and tell another person these 5 policies. Spread the message. It was such an organic campaign that it really excited young people, which the media missed. And when the Purdah rules were implemented, where the BBC had to show both sides equally, his polling went up.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why it had to be tied to the left more broadly rather than just him as a politician. Because it had to not just excise him and excise his movement, it had to excise everything that he believed in and everything that he supported and everything that all of the people who were encouraged and who were driven by those policy prescriptions, right? Everybody was a crank. Everyone's a Trotskyist. Everyone is, someone engaging in activist student politics rather than having a proper new political platform to change the socioeconomic new structure of this country, right?
Yeah.
And that's why, whether you think the Keir Starmer is some kind of Machiavellian fifth columnist or whatever, whether you just think that he's somebody who entirely runs based upon media narratives for political expediency, doesn't matter what the truth of that is, because the only result that could come of this smear campaign was Keir Starmer excising the left to try and make Labour quote-unquote electable. Because any amount of left-wing policy prescriptions will always get tied to Corbyn, and therefore always be tied to, the character assassination that was made over the course of that 4 years.
Yeah, and the initial expected smears would have been, he would have bankrupt this nation, he would have spent loads of money. That didn't wash on people because given the scale of the crisis we all face, given the cost of living crisis and given the corporate profits, when the media turned around and said, well, Corbyn's going to bankrupt this nation, he's going to spend loads and loads of money, people had moved on from austerity. I mean, I would argue that no one supported austerity, but the way they framed it before and there was no opposition, of course, people are like, we need to tighten our belts. People's minds change on that. So actually, people are like, we kind of like the idea of actually Labour being bold. So they thought, fuck, we can't do this. And then, well, now we know the anti-Semitism smear has been so successful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then there would be a much greater challenge. But because of Jeremy's own position and own words, he's got himself into this position.
Should he apologise? If he apologised, the likelihood is he certainly would have got the whip back.
The thing is, I don't think that an apology on that matter will do it because they've cited a different issue that in this motion.
So should he apologise anyway? I mean, process apart, should he apologise?
I think that he has apologised, and I think that he can do so again. I think there was a form of words which was agreed. He has apologised. He has apologised many times for the mishandling of anti-Semitism within the organisation, and he has made it clear that anyone who was perpetuating that form of racism and bigotry and was doing so in his name is not welcome in his party. Now, if it was about anti-Semitism, and this is the point I'm making, it would be mentioned in the motion.
Well,
ultimately, the reason why they haven't is because they've tried to create a different pretext.
You are asking us to forget the history.
I'm absolutely not.
I watched friend Joan Ryan turn up at her constituency meeting for a no-confidence motion with Iranian state TV filming it from the front row. It was bedlam. What was going on in the Labour Party did not reflect a Labour...
I'm sorry, does Jeremy Corbyn run the Iranian state television? Is that, what's the accusation there?
Are all Iranians anti-Semitic?
Well, they are of a, to quote another Labour MP, a different tinge.
Quite.
You've let Angela Smith, you called people of colour a funny tinge on the show.
Funny tinge, apologies.
That I have no... I've been a member of the Labour Party
Neil
since I was
Coyle.
16 years of age.
Yeah.
That period of Jeremy Corbyn's leadership presented a Labour Party to me with views that I had never, ever heard before.
I'm sorry. If the Labour Party,
shocking,
if the Labour Party was serious
Jeremy
about
Corbyn
racism,
needs to appreciate that and needs to apologise.
And also, even then,
the Labour
right?
Party was serious about racism. One,
even if you fundamentally believe that there were issues of anti-Semitism in the party, and there are conflicting reports on this, but it's clear from the ECHR report there have been incidents of anti-Semitism that could have been handled better. I think most people will agree on that key point there, right? But what they're trying to claim is that there was a specific problem in the wider Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership that was so endemic that it required commenting on outside of every other party, and the statistics do not back this up. Every single time this was studied, and it has shown that the single party where members who espoused the most amount of anti-Semitic statements was the Conservative Party, right?
Yep.
The only party that polled lower than the Labour Party was the Liberal Democrats.
And Corbyn's statement was a reflection of the truth. It wasn't, it's my opinion that it's been overstated. He quite literally cited evidence and examples of where it had been overblown in the media, because in actual fact, it was something like 0.03% of the membership had been investigated for anti-Semitism. When the public was asked how many people were supposedly anti-Semitic, it said 30%. That is a factual statement to say it has been overblown in the media.
By 10,000 times, no less.
And we know with both the EHRC and the Ford report that it was done on a factional issue. This isn't an opinion of Jeremy Corbyn. This is just concrete fact. And they are kicking themselves in the teeth trying to stop the debate on the actual issue and just to smear this one man so we can all be done with not socialism, social democracy in this country. That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but you literally had a Tory MP, unironically, Soros posting in Parliament this week. Did you hear the same people supposedly very, very upset about anti-Semitism, complaining about that?
Oh yeah, look, Suella Braverman citing neo-Nazi anti-Semitic terrorist Anders Breivik with the cultural Marxism conspiracy. The Board of Deputies, they do not believe at all that this woman is anti-Semitic in the slightest.
Or the praising of Nancy Astor.
Yep, from Rachel Reeves.
It would actually pick up the phone to Martin Ford Casey when he talks about there being a hierarchy of racism. It would deal with the mistreatment of black and Asian councillors and black and Asian MPs. And three, wait, hang on, I did listen to you. And I'm talking about
comes up with the Labour Party. We try and move.
Sorry, go on.
I was just saying, the only person of colour on that panel is talking about the hierarchy of racism, talking about anti-black and anti-brown racism, and the other white people just trying to shut it down, which I think is disgraceful.
Yeah, it's 100%. It's absolutely disgraceful. Like we've talked about the issues with Angela Smith. Actually, quite frankly, the way worse issues with Neil Coyle. Like Neil Coyle's been way more racist than Angela Smith, and he's just been allowed back, like just swan back into the Parliamentary Labour Party. It's absolutely obscene that Neil Coyle has been allowed back into the party, let alone the huge number of black and minority ethnic councillors in Leicester who just got summarily dismissed from their positions with no ability to be able to stand in the local council elections, right? Well, they actually went into the Leicester seat and then just took out swathes of black and minority ethnic councillors and left the majority of the white ones in their place. And we're trying to tell us another hierarchy of racism in the Labour Party, and then they always try and deflect, right? They always try and deflect. They cite no statistics. They only cite the random cases that we all know about now, rather than actually face the issues at hand. Because Siobhan McDonaugh can't properly scrutinise the fact that she is complicit, quite frankly, in anti-black racism by attempting to downplay it.
And the BBC here are obviously doing a disservice here, because throughout this whole debacle. And to be honest, the BBC does it on every issue. They could actually get experts on the show to really debate this. I think it was like a former director at the EHRC, doesn't work there anymore. He went on the, not the Andrew Marr show, and he quite literally said, as someone who used to work there quite high up in EHRC, I can see from this document that it kind of exonerates Jeremy Corbyn. They could get literal expert lawyers in defence of Corbyn, and if they want, expert lawyers against Corbyn, actual experts to debate this issue. But what they're doing is they're just getting politicians and media pundits who have no fucking clue what they're talking about on the BBC. If the BBC cared about truth, they get experts who know what they're talking about to debate it. The reason why they won't do that is because the danger here is that the truth might be revealed.
Mm-hmm.
Are you
100%.
saying the obviously politically funded school child in a suit isn't an expert in the matter?
Well, he's an expert, but apart from the others, I mean, this guy always talking about. Obviously, I don't. Yeah. We've got to show some love for our man Sebastian.
True, exactly. We are on a Payne stands. Let's go.
Move the goalpost.
No. This isn't goalpost.
We don't deal with.
We are the House of Payne. I like that works. That works. That could become a meme.
I like how she split down the head. You're moving the goalposts here. But this whole time, everyone in the political class has moved the goalposts in what Jeremy Corbyn has said. He's apologised. Okay, what about the report? He talks about the report. Okay, let's move the goalposts again. So I found it very funny that she's flipped it on Ash there.
Yeah, exactly.
True, but did he have to write Mein Kampf though? Really?
True. Or plan to reopen Auschwitz.
True.
I think he probably should have not done.
Yeah.
All right, well, finish
this is the issue.
Finish your point.
I'm talking as a woman of colour who's been on the left for a long time. And I was actually sitting in a seat just like this when Angela Smith turned to me and referred to people of colour as having a funny tinge. It was right here on the show. She's back in the party. How's that for zero tolerance?
I think Angela Smith has apologised.
Oh, has she?
Apologise
Oh.
come back into the Labour Party, but Corbyn can apologise a million times. It's not good enough. Oh, I love this.
It's ridiculous. It's unreal double standards. Unreal double standards. And again, it just shows the hierarchy of racism all over again, which is Ash Sarkar's original point. Her original point was saying people won't acknowledge the hierarchy of racism that's been clearly demonstrated by Martin Ford Casey, and so much so they're ignoring him to the point at which they won't even give him a call. And he spoke to nobody since the publishing of the report, apart from like one person, about the issue with regards to anti-black and Islamophobic racism in the country. And this has been so obscured by the mainstream media. The only actual paper that ran an article on the episode 4 of the Labour Files was the Daily Express, and they framed it that Martin Ford was trying to claim that Labour wasn't doing enough on continual issues of anti-Semitism, when that wasn't his point at all. His point was the fact that they're doing so much anti-Semitism that they're forgetting about the fact that they need to also tackle anti-black and Islamophobic racism within the party as well. It's unreal that the absolute fucking media cordon sanitaire they have around any discussion about the anti-black and Islamophobic racism within the Labour Party, or, quite frankly, within the Conservative Party, where it's even worse, right? We can obviously we absolutely should be holding Labour's feet to the fire, but let's not let Conservatives off the hook on this one either. They are the most Islamophobic anti-black party in the country as well. And the reason why this is because, do you know what the media in this class are? Also anti-black and also Islamophobic, and that's the issue.
I really hope that Ash does come back on this and say, Siobhan, you're quite literally an example here of a hierarchy of racism, because Jeremy Corbyn has apologised multiple times, yet this is still a sticking issue. I've just brought up Angela Smith, who was racist towards me, calling me and people that look like me a funny tinge. She's been welcomed with open arms. And you say, yeah, but she's apologised. But why was that such an easy thing to do for her? Why did she just have to apologise once and that's it? Whereas we're still talking about Jeremy Corbyn. I hope Ash says what you're doing now is a hierarchy of racism. I don't know if she will, but Siobhan is literally doing hierarchy of racism right there.
Right now. And the thing is, as well, as Jeremy Corbyn was only seen to be permissive of racism that other people were doing, and about that's enough to bar him forever. Whereas Angela Smith engaged in direct racism herself on live TV, and that just demands one apology, one simple apology, and she's back in the party. Back in the party, having violated the party rulebook by standing for another fucking party.
I don't remember any slurs as well that Corbyn said at all. And yet, as you alluded to earlier about the Conservatives, Boris Johnson has written a book, and in the book he's written so many quotes about Muslims, about black people, but he also wrote down some anti-Semitic tropes in black and white, and he's the Prime Minister, or he was the former Prime Minister. No one said anything. Yet, okay, maybe the mural with Jeremy Corbyn was kind of blindsided, but you cannot find a single example where Jeremy Corbyn has said anything anti-Semitic or even a slur or nod to it. There's not a single quote from him. They cannot do it. It's guilt by association, if that.
True. I'd just like to apologise for Helen's use of French as well. I can't promise it won't happen again, but I will try. Okay.
For her words, realised that she was wrong about them. We cannot say the same for Jeremy Corbyn. And he presided over a period in the Labour Party which brought shame to us, and I feel ashamed of it to this day.
And Martin Ford?
Ash, can I ask you a question about the apology thing just on this? Because you're right, he has apologised in the round, but what he's not accepted was the Equality and Human Rights Commission report, because when that came back and said there was institutional racism within Labour, and that's now been removed, Keir Starmer has worked towards that. If Jeremy Corbyn had apologised for that report and accepted
It explicitly did not say that there was institutional anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. It explicitly said the opposite. These people are just allowed to go on TV and just fucking lie. I'm having a fucking aneurysm. I'm going to lose my mind.
He said nothing about the report. He did. When the EHRC report, that's where the sticking issue with the statement. Before he said a Labour member. He said the report came out, he then says, look at this report. I'm obviously shocked, but it does say that we improve the processes. I apologise unequivocally for anti-Semitism. However, as we can see in the report, it shows it's not institutionally anti-Semitic. Therefore, I think political opponents and those in the media have overblown the amount, not anti-Semitism in general, Like, that you cannot overblown racism, but the amount of it was overblown. So we directly reference the EHRC, which this fucking guy is just making up. And well, he's lying on national television. And is it Joe Bird? No, the presenter,
The presenter,
host.
yeah,
the host won't pick him up on that. Won't say anything.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but the fact that he then goes, well, but Keir Starmer has worked very hard to get rid of this. But the fact that he's seemingly okay with and supportive of Keir Starmer in all of this is enough for me to be like, I'm not sure I can vote. I can't vote for this dude. The fact that Sebastian Payne is too far, when you are courting his support, I'm done with you.
100%. And the thing is, as well, is like Keir Starmer has expelled more Jewish people in his very short time as leader than in the entirety of the time when Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the party.
Which is the joke I made earlier about Ed Miliband being the only Jewish guy left in the party.
Yeah, exactly.
And interesting enough, because I made a video about this, when Ed Miliband was leader, the first Jewish Labour leader, the media did the same thing. There were those essentially calling Ed Miliband a Jewish hater or self-hating Jew because he dared to speak up about Palestinians. Now, obviously, the it wasn't as aggressive, but there were actually those in the media who were saying that Ed Miliband has lost the confidence in Jewish people.
True, although he did,
and they've done to Bernie Sanders in America. Bernie Sanders was doing a rally, and someone literally shouts out anti-Semitic vitriol at Bernie Sanders, and I think it might have been a Jewish newspaper that wrote up and said, obviously these smears are really, really bad, but we can't also disregard the fact that Bernie Sanders may have been a part of the reason why that's happened. Literally blaming a Jewish person being on the receiving end of racism, and because Bernie Sanders is left-wing and he's spoken up for Palestine, that he's now supposedly implicated in his own racism.
Ridiculous. It's insane. It's insane. It really is insane.
Ed Miliband's lovely faux pas when he said he wanted to become Britain's first Jewish prime minister, forgetting that we'd had one 100 years before he was born.
He probably meant Labour prime minister, but yeah.
Well, before even the Labour Party existed. Look up Benjamin Disraeli. Interesting chap. Anyway, also a massive racist and colonialist, but never mind.
Do not think he would be suspended. Why did he not accept that?
He talked about how saddened he was reading that report, and he also said
But why couldn't he not just said it?
I think that what this is about is that there would have been nothing that he said that would have been good enough in the eyes of Keir Starmer. I think, honestly, that's the case, and that's why they haven't mentioned anti-Semitism in this motion, because if he did do everything that's being asked, he said, I will accept whatever form of words you want me to say, and said it, they would say, well, actually, it's not about that. It's about the fact she lost the election. It's looking for an excuse, and it's plain as day.
But that motion is about wider disrepute of the Labour Party. That's what they get at, and that obviously plays into what Siobhan was saying. It doesn't mean anti-Semitism by name, but the election result, combined with anti-Semitism, is what took Labour to that dreadful result in 2019.
But I'm sorry, if it doesn't mention anti-Semitism in the motion, I don't think you can consider these two together, particularly when Ed Miliband, who lost an election, is in the shadow cabinet.
Moving away from the process, do you think Jeremy Corbyn should stand as an independent?
I think that he's someone who could do well as an independent, like other successful independents before him. He's particularly well liked in his constituency. Everyone agrees he's a very good constituency MP. And also he's got name recognition. So this could be something which ends up being a self-inflicted wound for Keir Starmer.
I think it's completely up to Jeremy whether he wants
also,
to
one
stand
other thing
as
as well
an
before they move
independent
on.
or not.
Oh, hang on.
One other thing I would mention to this as well is that the key thing as well is that it's obviously factional. It's obviously factional for the specific reasons that Ash was pointing out there about the anti-Semitism not actually being included. And obviously we all know that then there might have to be some kind of future court proceedings about libel or whatever, potentially, that they want to try and avoid, for example. But it's very, very clear that they're just like, we want to make sure that the party is full of our people and not their people, because their people lose and our people win. And that's it. And that's why there's a difference between Corbyn and Miliband for this specific issue.
The Labour position is what matters to me, and the Labour's position is absolutely right.
Do you think it will be divisive, though, Seb, in terms of keeping him out of the Labour Party and refusing to let him stand as a Labour candidate?
Well, this has come to this point over several years. We've not just come to this suddenly because of this point. The Equality and Human Rights report, which was absolutely damning, came out several years ago. And Mr Corbyn's response to that, as we were saying earlier, was to not just accept it in the same way that the Labour leadership did. There were a lot of effort, Ash, between the whipping team, the chief whip, and Jeremy Corbyn to try and broker some kind of compromise. But Mr Corbyn has consistently...
Go on, sorry.
It's quite a literal lie on TV because he said, I accept all the recommendations in full. So this isn't misinformation. Well, this is misinformation, but this is a categoric lie on TV.
It's just a lie. It's just straight up lying, yeah.
Apart from Ash Sarkar, who, I mean, credit to Ash Sarkar, she's literally in the pit here, all these people attacking her. She didn't quite get to that point, but someone needs to turn around and say, look, you are lying. All of you on this panel are lying. Okay? You don't have to like Jeremy Corbyn. You can be a right-winger. You can absolutely hate his politics, but truth matters to everybody. And we cannot sit here and say things that just are simply not true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they couldn't do that, then most of the British media would be silent.
True.
Instantly failed to accept the findings of that report and accept what was found. And I think that is the divisive issue. If he'd accepted that...
What element of the report didn't he accept?
He did not accept the point where he found that the institutional racism point, the equality and
It didn't say that!
Talk about how saddened he was by the findings. He didn't disregard the report. The bit that was contentious, oh God, this is so boring and doesn't impact people's lives.
Yeah, but it does matter. Oh, sorry, anti-Semitism is boring.
No. I'm talking about haggling over words. I'm talking about haggling over the precise words. The words that he used,
Because
which
why
caused the
couldn't he
problem.
just apologise?
I'm just explaining what he said. That's it. Right? What he said, and the bit that Keir Starmer
I
had a
love
problem
this.
with.
This faux outrage. Anti-Semitism doesn't even matter to you.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I've never heard you once condemn fucking, was it black post boxes and grinning pickaninnies with watermelon smiles. Never any of the racism engaged in by Boris Johnson has never once, as far as I'm aware, passed your lips.
It's
you
funny
couldn't give a fuck.
How a whole media ecosystem, which has historically been massively racist, is suddenly so outraged about this. They don't care about anti-Semitism. They don't care about racism. It's all a factional issue, not just within the Labour Party, but from all political parties and the mainstream media. And that faction is the establishment. That is it. It's not about left-wing or right-wing inside the Labour Party. It is the establishment, which includes the media ecosystem, against a handful of MPs who are fighting against the establishment. That's the true dividing line here. And the establishment has never cared about racism because the establishment is a colonial British empire. It literally, we had fucking slaves. We have right-wing press constantly using dog whistles. We're platforming Andrew Smith saying racist things. The media doesn't care about racism. So why do they suddenly care about anti-Semitism? They don't. They never did. They never will.
The same media class that supposedly cares so much about racism when it's time to bash Jeremy Corbyn are the same one that has spent the last month slabbering over the degree to which we can inflict cruelty and punishment upon the most desperate people in the world.
And who are disproportionately people of colour. But of course, we don't care about that, do they?
Oh, no, well, no, white ones from Ukraine can come in. I mean,
it's exactly the point. Exactly.
And again, this is the point I'm about to make is not anti-Ukrainian migrant. I'm just bringing this up as a comparison, shall we say. The same media class that are, I mean, literally a day away from publishing stuff about how we should fucking send nuclear submarines to sink tiny fishing vessels full of, 12 desperate asylum seekers or whatever. We're celebrating the fact that the England-Ukraine football game, which happened yesterday, 1,000 British-hosted Ukrainian migrants, so temporarily hosted in British houses, were invited to the game and given free tickets. Now, that's quite a beautiful thing. I quite like that. But note that they're all like the white ones. They invited 1,000 white migrants who were being paid by the British government, or the people whose houses they're living in are being paid for by the British government. At the same time, in the same newspapers, they are literally foaming at the mouth, desperate to try and sink migrant ships full of brown people. I think that's an interesting juxtaposition.
Quite so.
is saying that there was some exaggeration in the press of the scale of anti-Semitism. That's the bit that became contentious.
Yes.
He didn't disregard the findings. He didn't refuse to accept the findings. That's the part that was contentious. Now, you might disagree with that, as is your right, and you can say that should be a dividing line. Again, it's your right to say so. But to sit here and say he didn't apologise, oh, well, he did apologise, but he didn't accept the findings. Oh, well, he did accept the findings, but he didn't use this precise turn of phrase. That shows you how the goalposts are moving. And this is the point, is that it makes a mockery of something really serious, which is racism and does affect people's lives, and it turns it into political horse trading, which doesn't matter to anybody outside Westminster.
I don't think it's a mockery, though, 'cause as I said, if you look at all the other people involved in Labour, many of them in the leadership accepted everything in that report.
And you can say that he should have done that.
Yes, and I do. And I
He
think
did
if that had
accept
happened,
everything.
We wouldn't have been in this situation.
And of course, we'll find out exactly what happens after that NEC meeting tomorrow.